He's talking about pumping up, he's talking about psyching me out, she's talking about my mother. Yeah.
From Arnold Schwarzenegger casually breaking Lou Ferrigno's confidence over breakfast, to Ken Waller destroying Mike Katz's focus with one petty t-shirt stunt, these are the moments bodybuilders openly humiliated their rivals, starting with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Before Arnold Schwarzenegger became the Terminator, the governor of California, or one of the most recognizable humans walking this planet, he was something far more terrifying to his competitors, a master of psychological warfare who systematically dismantled his rivals' confidence before they ever had the chance to step on stage. The legendary 1977 documentary Pumping Iron captured Arnold's methods in stunning detail, revealing to the world what his competitors had known for years, that the Austrian oak was as dangerous with his words as he was impressive with his physique. What viewers witnessed was nothing short of psychological genius wrapped in Austrian charm, delivered with a smile that made every subtle insult feel almost like a compliment. Take, for example, his treatment of Lou Ferrigno, the towering competitor who would later find fame as television's Incredible Hulk. The morning before the 1975 Mr. Olympia competition, with nerves running high and stakes even higher, Arnold sat down for breakfast with Ferrigno and his family. What followed was an absolute masterclass in subtle destruction, the kind of psychological manipulation that would make Sun Tzu nod in approval. With a warm smile plastered across his face and a seemingly friendly demeanor that put everyone at ease, Arnold casually mentioned that Lou needed just one more month of training to be in peak shape, but it was just unfortunate timing. He then proceeded to boast about his winning streak, planting seeds of doubt that would bloom into full-blown anxiety by the time the competitors took the stage. He even shared his vision of winning his 6th title, essentially declaring victory before a single pose was struck. Arnold's tactics with his training partner Franco Columbu were equally calculated and ruthless. When journalists asked him about his close friend as a potential threat on stage, Arnold's response was chilling in its simplicity and devastating in its implications. Franco is like a sheep, and I am the wolf. Despite their genuine friendship and years of training together, Arnold understood with crystal clarity that the stage was a battlefield where sentiment had no place and victory demanded ruthlessness. But perhaps Arnold's most controversial mind games came against Sergio Oliva, the Myth, a Cuban defector whose physique many observers and historians believed was actually superior to Arnold's own. Their legendary battles in 1970 and 1972 remain some of the most debated contests in bodybuilding history. Frank Zane, a fellow competitor who witnessed these battles firsthand, stated unequivocally that Oliva was better than Arnold at the 1972 Olympia, noting Oliva's superior ripping and conditioning. Even Arnold himself reportedly admitted after securing that win, "I don't deserve to win this." Yet through relentless positioning, superior political maneuvering, and psychological gamesmanship, Arnold emerged victorious, leaving Oliva publicly frustrated and feeling like he had been set up to lose. But while Arnold preferred chess-level mind games, the next man on this list used something far simpler and far more brutal. A t-shirt, yes, a single t-shirt that created one of bodybuilding's most infamous humiliations. Ken Waller. The 1975 Mr. Universe competition in Pretoria, South Africa, gave birth to one of bodybuilding's most infamous acts of psychological sabotage, a moment that would haunt competitor Mike Katz for decades and cement Ken Waller's reputation as the sport's original villain in the eyes of millions who watched Pumping Iron. Mike Katz was no ordinary bodybuilder with ordinary motivations. He had survived relentless childhood bullying for his Jewish heritage, briefly played professional football for the New York Jets until a knee injury ended those dreams, and had transformed himself from a bullied kid in glasses into one of the era's most impressive physical specimens. His journey to bodybuilding was one of redemption and self-reinvention, powered by an unshakable determination to prove his doubters wrong. But Katz had a weakness, a superstition that his competitors would identify and ruthlessly exploit. Before every single competition without fail, Katz wore his lucky yellow t-shirt during warm-ups. It was a ritual as essential to his preparation as any workout or meal plan, a source of confidence that steadied his nerves before the storm of competition. Ken Waller knew this, and Ken Waller devised a plan that would become bodybuilding legend. As cameras rolled for what would become Pumping Iron, Waller stole the shirt from the locker room and hid it, watching with barely concealed satisfaction as Katz searched frantically throughout the backstage area, his composure crumbling with each passing minute. The documentary captured Katz fighting back tears, his focus shattered into 1,000 pieces before he ever hit the stage. It was psychological warfare in its purest, most devastating form. The result of this sabotage? Katz finished 4th in the tall class, while Waller claimed both the tall class and overall victory. Whether the prank truly affected the final outcome or was dramatized and exaggerated for the cameras remains debated to this very day among bodybuilding historians. Some accounts suggest the incident was partially staged or amplified for the film's dramatic narrative, with Waller himself later expressing deep regret about the villain portrayal that led to years of audiences booing him at guest opposing events across the country. But what remains absolutely undeniable is this powerful truth. Pumping iron exposed the psychological underbelly of competitive bodybuilding to a mainstream audience, showing the world that in this sport of ultimate physicality, a simple t-shirt could be wielded as powerfully as a perfect physique. If Waller's sabotage was petty and personal, Ronnie Coleman's dominance was something else entirely. He didn't need tricks, mind games, or stolen clothes. His strength alone shattered his opponent's spirits. Ronnie Coleman. Ronnie Coleman didn't need to trash talk, didn't need to get in anyone's face, and didn't need to play elaborate mind games. His physique spoke volumes that words never could. 8 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles from 1998 to 2000, a record that stands tied only with the legendary Haney at the pinnacle of bodybuilding achievement. But what made Coleman truly devastating to his competitors wasn't merely his unprecedented size or his grainy conditioning. It was the almost supernatural way he made the impossible look completely effortless. His signature catchphrases, "lightweight baby" and "ain't nothing but a peanut," became legendary throughout the fitness world, not because they were insulting or belittling, but because they were demonstrably and terrifyingly true. While competitors struggled mightily to squat 500 pounds with perfect form, Coleman was throwing around 800 pounds like it was a mere warm-up set, barely breaking a sweat while others were left gasping. The psychological impact of watching your main rival warm up with more weight than your personal best cannot possibly be overstated. Coleman's most memorable humiliation came across the 1998 and 1999 Olympias against Flex Wheeler, the Sultan of Symmetry, a man many experts and fans considered the most aesthetically perfect bodybuilder ever created by genetics and dedication. In 1999, after losing to Coleman for the second consecutive time, despite bringing what he believed was his best ever package, Wheeler's frustration boiled over in dramatic fashion. He turned his back to the judges and audience, removed his silver medal in disgust, and gestured emphatically that he believed he should have been crowned #1. It was an unprecedented display of raw emotion, revealing exactly what Coleman's overwhelming dominance did to even the greatest competitors who stood in his shadow. Against Jay Cutler, who represented the next generation's most determined challenger, Coleman maintained his psychological edge through seemingly humble yet cutting trash talk. When Cutler expressed public confidence that he could finally defeat the champion, Coleman jokingly said Cutler must be smoking crack if he genuinely thought he could win, delivered with that trademark infectious smile that somehow made it all the more devastating. For years upon years, Cutler endured agonizing second-place finishes: 2001, 2003, 2004, and 2005. Each loss a painful reminder that no matter how perfect his preparation, no matter how hard he trained, no matter how strict his diet, the king still sat unmoved upon his throne. But even the most unstoppable champion eventually meets the challenger who refuses to break. And for Ronnie Coleman, that challenger was Jay Cutler, patient, relentless, and ready to end an era. Jay Cutler. For Jay Cutler, revenge wasn't a dish served cold. It was served after what seemed like an eternity of patient preparation, countless heart-wrenching second-place finishes, and an unwavering belief that his moment of glory would eventually come. When that moment finally arrived at the 2006 Mr. Olympia in Las Vegas, Cutler didn't just defeat Ronnie Coleman, he ended an entire era of bodybuilding dominance. What made Cutler's victory particularly significant and emotionally charged was the context surrounding it. Coleman had won 8 consecutive titles, tying Haney's seemingly untouchable record that many believed would stand forever. The bodybuilding world had grown accustomed to coronations rather than competitions. Everyone knew who would win before the show even started. But Cutler had been quietly studying his rival's weaknesses, evolving his own physique year after year, and waiting with the patience of a predator for his moment to strike. In 2006, at the Las Vegas Olympia, Cutler arrived with significantly enhanced symmetry and superior conditioning throughout his entire physique, while Coleman showed undeniable signs of physical decline, particularly a lat asymmetry that betrayed years of brutally heavy lifting and the accumulated damage it inflicts on a human body. The once invincible king's body was finally giving out under the relentless demands he had placed upon it. The victory margin was slim by the numbers, but the statement it made was absolutely enormous in its implications. What followed immediately after became one of bodybuilding's most iconic and touching moments. Coleman, gracious in defeat despite his obvious heartbreak, gave Cutler a piggyback ride across the stage, a powerful symbol of the deep mutual respect between these warriors that transcended their fierce competition. Cutler went on to win 4 Mr. Olympia titles total: 2006, 2007, 2009, 2010, later reflecting thoughtfully that if I wasn't chasing Ronnie, I never would have pushed as hard. The magazines had built this up to kind of hate each other for entertainment purposes, but their genuine rivalry had actually forged them both into legends who elevated the entire sport. Sometimes the greatest humiliation isn't delivered with malice or cruel intentions. It's delivered through sheer perseverance that proves every doubter wrong. Cutler's victory symbolized respect. The next man, he earned his spotlight through controversy. Few bodybuilders talked more, provoked more, and angered more rivals than Shawn Ray. Shawn Ray. Shawn Ray earned his legendary nickname the Giant Killer by consistently defeating competitors who towered over his 5'7" frame through superior conditioning and stage presence. But while his physique was undeniably impressive in its own right, it was his mouth that made him one of bodybuilding's most controversial and openly hated figures throughout the sport. Ray competed in 13 Mr. Olympia contests spanning from 1988 to 2001, placing in the top 5 an astounding 12 times, but never managing to capture the ultimate title that he craved so desperately. This perpetual bridesmaid status didn't humble Ray or teach him graciousness. Instead, it sharpened his tongue into a weapon that he deployed mercilessly against anyone unfortunate enough to fall within his crosshairs. His bitter rivalry with 6-time Mr. Olympia Dorian Yates defined the entire mid-1990s bodybuilding landscape and generated headlines year after year. After finishing second to an injured Yates in 1994, when the Shadow competed with a visibly torn bicep that created obvious asymmetry, Ray famously and publicly complained about judging favoritism, stating bitterly that Shawn Ray at 100% cannot beat Dorian at 80%. The comment was intended as harsh criticism of the judges and the system, but it inadvertently and ironically highlighted just how completely dominant Yates had become in the minds of everyone involved. Ray's trash talk extended well beyond the stage and long after his competitive career ended. His repeated criticism of modern bodybuilding as the Wild West of excessive drug use and his public callouts of coaches and competitors alike earned him a lasting reputation as the sport's most divisive voice. When former Mr. Olympia Shawn Roden died tragically in 2021 at just age 46, Ray's comments speculating about drug involvement were deemed so insensitive and poorly timed that the entire interview had to be removed from circulation. Yet love him or hate him, and most people fell firmly into one camp or the other, Ray understood something fundamental about his sport. In bodybuilding's subjective judging world where politics and perception matter enormously, staying relevant meant staying talked about. His controversial commentary continues to polarize audiences and generate discussions decades after his last competition. Ray fought with words, but in the shadows, a different kind of destroyer was waiting. Dorian Yates, the man whose silence alone was enough to terrify the entire lineup. Dorian Yates. While some bodybuilders chose to humiliate their rivals through cutting words and psychological manipulation, Dorian Yates, known throughout the sport as the Shadow, accomplished the same devastating effect through an almost supernatural ability to appear seemingly from nowhere and utterly dominate everyone in his path. His 6 consecutive Mr. Olympia victories from 1992 to 1997 ushered in what became known as the Mass Monster era, fundamentally and permanently changing what it meant to be a champion bodybuilder. Yates trained in complete isolation at his Temple Gym in Birmingham, England, a far cry from the sun-soaked, celebrity-filled Gold's Gym in Venice Beach, where most of his competitors prepared amid cameras and attention. This reclusive approach wasn't merely personal preference or British reserve, it was calculated psychological warfare of the highest order. Competitors never had any idea what Yates was bringing until he materialized at contest time, already in absolutely peak condition, while others scrambled desperately to catch up to a target they couldn't even see. His rivalry with Shawn Ray reached its most controversial peak at the 1996 Mr. Olympia in Chicago. Yates himself openly admitted afterward that he overdid his diet and appeared flat, not his best showing by any stretch of the imagination. Ray, meanwhile, believed with absolute conviction that he had achieved his absolute lifetime best physique, bringing a package that should have finally crowned him champion. Yet Yates still won the contest. Ray later described with obvious bitterness spotting a judge in a private room with Yates backstage before the competition, fueling his belief that the entire system favored the incumbent champion regardless of what happened on stage. Whether these suspicions were justified or merely the rationalizations of a frustrated competitor, this perception that Ray couldn't defeat Yates even when Yates admittedly wasn't at his best represented perhaps the most demoralizing realization any competitor could possibly face. Flex Wheeler, another elite competitor of that era, later admitted in interviews that Yates was simply unbeatable during his prime years, a reluctant concession that speaks volumes to the complete psychological devastation of facing an opponent who seemed to exist on an entirely different level of human achievement. Yet long before Yates redefined mass, another legend set the original unbeatable standard. Lee Haney didn't humiliate competitors with trash talk, he humiliated them simply by being untouchable. Lee Haney. Before Ronnie Coleman's reign became the standard against which all champions were measured, there was Lee Haney, the man who originally set the seemingly impossible standard of 8 consecutive Mr. Olympia victories from 1984 to 1991. His dominance was so complete, so absolute, and so unquestionable that he retired completely undefeated, having never lost a single Mr. Olympia contest he entered during his entire competitive career. Rich Gaspari actually trained alongside Haney during the summer of 1984 at the legendary World Gym in Venice Beach, Haney preparing for what Gaspari working intensely toward earning his professional card. Their brutal training sessions were described as steel sharpening steel, with both men pushing each other to limits they might never have reached alone. But when they met on the Olympia stage, their friendship became secondary to the fierce demands of competition. Gaspari would finish second to Haney 3 consecutive years, 1986, 1987, and 1988. Despite pioneering game-changing innovations like glute striations that revolutionized conditioning standards throughout the entire sport, Gaspari could never overcome Haney's overwhelming combination of mass, symmetry, and commanding stage presence. He later reflected with a mixture of respect and frustration that he would have been a 3-time Mr. Olympia without Haney standing in his path, a statement that perfectly captures the unique frustration of being elite but facing someone truly transcendent. Lee Labrada's epic battles with Haney became known throughout bodybuilding circles as David versus Goliath. Standing at just 5'6" and weighing approximately 175 pounds, Labrada looked almost like a child standing next to Haney's imposing 5'11", 256-pound frame. Yet Labrada's classical proportions were so absolutely perfect that he briefly led after prejudging in 1990, remarkably the only time anyone ever accomplished this feat during Haney's entire 8-year reign. But when the finals were tallied, Haney still won. Labrada later generously called Haney the greatest of our era, a gracious concession from a man who had come closer than almost anyone else to dethroning the king. But as the years passed, bodybuilding changed, and so did its rivalries. Few stories were more explosive, dramatic, or emotionally charged than Kai Greene's war against Phil Heath. Kai Greene. Kai Greene's unlikely path to bodybuilding greatness was forged through unimaginable adversity that would have broken lesser individuals. Placed in foster care at just 6 years old, he discovered weight training in residential treatment centers, where it became both his escape from a harsh world and his salvation. This challenging background gave his trash talk a unique philosophical edge, part street wisdom, part artistic expression, that could leave opponents genuinely confused about whether they had just been complimented or completely insulted. His legendary feud with Phil Heath became modern bodybuilding's defining rivalry, generating more attention and controversy than any competitive matchup since Arnold's era. After Greene defeated Heath at the 2010 Arnold Classic in a stunning upset, the stage was set for years of escalating tension that would captivate the entire bodybuilding world. The 2014 Mr. Olympia press conference remains absolutely legendary among fans who witnessed it. What began as standard promotional banter between competitors quickly devolved into complete chaos, with Greene firing philosophical yet aggressive barbs that left competitors like Dennis Wolf genuinely bewildered and unsure how to respond. When Heath listed his previous victories, 2011, 2012, 2013, in a deliberately mocking tone designed to remind everyone of his dominance, Greene responded with cutting retorts delivered with such intensity that it nearly sparked an actual physical altercation on stage. Greene later claimed with evident frustration that he was the only competitor penalized by officials for the explosive incident, believing strongly that the punishment may have cost him the Sandow Trophy despite being at his physical best that year. He finished second for the 3rd consecutive year, tantalizingly close yet ultimately denied. Greene's dramatic style, his elaborate artistic posing routines, his spiritual monologues about the meaning of bodybuilding, his media-savvy presence that generated constant attention, amplified every loss into a perceived injustice and every victory into glorious vindication. Whether you viewed him as a misunderstood artist expressing himself through muscle or an overly theatrical showman playing to the cameras, one thing was absolutely certain: no one commanded attention quite like the Predator. And if Kai Greene brought passion and philosophy, Phil Heath brought cold, calculated dominance. Together, they created one of bodybuilding's most hostile, combustible showdowns. Phil Heath. Phil Heath earned his fitting nickname, The Gift, for a very good reason. His symmetrical physique and obvious genetic potential seemed almost unfair to those who had spent decades chasing what he achieved in mere years. 7 consecutive Mr. Olympia titles from 2011 to 2017 placed him in truly elite company, tied with Arnold Schwarzenegger himself for the 2nd most victories of all time. But it was his bitter rivalry with Kai Greene that revealed Heath's significant capacity for psychological warfare when pushed to his limits. Heath openly acknowledged in interviews that their feud was ugly, completely unlike the friendly competition between Coleman and Cutler. There was genuine and palpable animosity between them that extended far beyond professional rivalry. At the 2014 Olympia, their antagonism reached an absolute breaking point that shocked observers. During callouts, they physically crowded each other on stage, attempting to literally push each other off their positions in front of thousands of spectators. The earlier press conference had already set the combative tone, with Heath's dismissive listing of his consecutive victories cutting deep into Greene's confidence and pride. The result was 3 consecutive runner-up finishes for Greene: 2012, 2013 and 2014, each loss more painful and humiliating than the last. Greene eventually stopped competing at the Olympia altogether, citing mysterious circumstances beyond his control, but widely believed by fans and insiders to have been driven out by overwhelming frustration with a system he felt would never crown him champion while Heath still reigned. Heath later reflected with surprising generosity that Greene gets credit from me because he was the first athlete in that era to really push me, a rare acknowledgement that even dominant champions need worthy adversaries to achieve their full potential. In 2025, the two continued trading barbs on social media, with Heath offering to coach Greene and Greene firing back defiantly. We both know that I didn't get a fair shake, but in the social media era, rivalries evolved again. The new school doesn't rely on press conferences, it relies on viral humiliation, and no one embodies that shift more than Blessing Awadabu. Blessing Awadabu. In an era where social media has completely transformed bodybuilding rivalries into viral content and engagement metrics, Blessing Awadabu, known throughout the fitness world as the Boogeyman, has emerged as the sport's most prolific and unapologetic trash talker. With over 1.7 million Instagram followers hanging on his every word, Awadabu has masterfully learned the art of building hype through bold predictions and provocative callouts that generate millions of views. His primary target has been fellow rising star Nick Walker, with their increasingly personal feud beginning before the 2021 New York Pro. Awadabu's attacks were brutal, personal, and designed for maximum viral impact. He openly mocked Walker's quads as short AF, dubbed him Assman on social media, and proclaimed himself the master who would teach Walker his proper place in the bodybuilding hierarchy. Walker fired back with equal venom, calling Awadabu's physique lopsided and questioning whether his mouth could cash the checks his Instagram was writing. The only problem with all this bravado, Awadabu finished a disappointing 6th, while Walker convincingly won the show. This dramatic result perfectly illustrates the double-edged sword of modern trash talk that social media has created. When you win after talking relentlessly, your opponents are demoralized twice over, first by your confident prediction, then by the crushing result that proves you right. But when you lose spectacularly after hyping yourself relentlessly to millions of followers, the internet remembers absolutely everything, and the memes never stop. Awadabu partially redeemed himself by winning the 2022 New York Pro, immediately calling out Walker again and promising to whoop his ass at the upcoming Olympia. Whether his mouth consistently writes checks his body can cash remains the central drama of his ongoing career, and a question his millions of followers eagerly wait to see answered. His approach represents the complete evolution of bodybuilding feuds into social media spectacles, where generating engagement and followers can sometimes seem as important as building actual muscle. For better or worse, Awadabu understands something fundamental about competition in 2025. Generating massive engagement is nearly as important as building an impressive physique. That brings us to the end of this video. For more interesting videos like this, click on the cards on your screen.